That thing used to auto mute, and now it doesn't even do that. So, look, evening guys, how you doing? Ross, Alan, good to have y'all
What's
on.
up? We're live.
Jeff, Ross, yeah, hey, welcome.
This is the first. Well, this, like I say, you just found out this is the first time you two have been on here together and know each other now.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
We'll have a little more fuel to the fire here. Those of you out there, there's 5 of you out there watching now. William, how you doing? Chuck's always first. Todd, how's the yard sale going, buddy? Have you upped the percentages? Joe Hammond, how you doing? Thanks for popping over, buddy. So, all right. So here's the deal. So I got with these two, and we all play a variety. Well, between the 3 of us and a few others, we dabbled into a whole bunch of different ACW stuff. And I thought, you know what? To me, the 3 hottest systems out there are GBACW, Black Swan, and Blind Sword. I thought, well, let's 3 of us get together and just chit chat about it. Nemesis, how you doing? Wisconsin, hey, them black-hatted fellers. So we're just gonna made about 5 or 6 topics that I shared out with these guys, or things we want to talk about, and we're just going to discuss the game system and see maybe what differences or what common ground these things have, and we'll and you guys out there in the crowd, you got something you want to ask, or you got something you want to mention about one of the systems, by all means do it. We'll do our best to catch all the comments. Eric, how you doing? Sunnyvale, California. So we got the hillbilly from West Virginia, that's me. We got a Tokie, that's Ross. And we got a Connecticut, right out from up Connecticut.
New England, yeah, Yankee.
Yeah, New England, yeah, I'm sorry. Why don't I think Connecticut? Were you talking about something, a unit or something? Oh, yeah, I was watching your video, the Bull Run, I think it was.
Yep.
Not a Bull Run, or it was your was it what's the other one you're playing? McDowell, I think, or something right now?
McDowell, Kernstown. I just played Kernstown too for.
Yeah. And you were talking about a Connecticut regiment. I think that's the last thing that stuck in my head. You said something.
Oh, yeah.
Richard Kerr, good evening. So, so we're going to get this underway. We're going to talk about Black Swan. We're going to talk about Blind Swords. And we're going to talk about Great Battles of the American Civil War. Because, I don't know, just general opinion, crowd, you all can say what y'all want. But I'll ask you guys, for detail of a game, GBACW is the one to go to. Any argument there?
No. That's got the most. In fact, I was just in a conversation, people not liking it because it's got so much detail. It's got, so much little nitty gritty in there. But I was like, that's the fun of it. That's you want to see ACW fighting. That's the one to go to. Yeah,
and I could have thrown one more system in here, but I'm still not convinced, and that's Line of Battle. I mean, fun to play, but I don't quite get. I don't see where it. I don't know. It's what's the word I'm looking for? It's too loose, and things don't flow. I don't feel like they flow the right way in Line of Battle. Still fun to play. I still got their Wilderness one on pre-order, which I think is probably going to pop before any other GBACW. The next GBACW stuff comes out. I really think Wilderness is, because they don't mess around MMP. And they really don't give you much warning. When it's ready to go, boom, all of a sudden you see it. And, hey, it's on its way. I will say that. And, heck, they're only right over the river here from me, so I get them pretty quick when they do get out here. So, Nordic, how you doing, buddy? Good to see you. Haven't seen you in a while. All right, so the first thing we're going to get into, which, when we're talking about the details, is we're talking about the scale of the games. All right. Now, it's obvious Blind Swords is regiment. All right, GBACW is regiment for unit size, and I'm going to use this word, but if Herman pops on there, he'll shake his head. Black Swan, the word got instituted called demi brigades, which I know Herman doesn't like that word. He doesn't consider them that. It's just he's combined the regiments into 2 or 3 counters in a brigade, and it works. Now the scale of it, of course, now with Black Swan, I was just looking at the Rock of Chickamauga. My box is back there. See the display? Got the display.
Beautiful.
Nice. Nice.
The Rock of Chickamauga is, I think it's 200 meters or 200 yards. And I want to say that I remember from playing 200 yards, which I like that because I grew up with the GBACW, the original stuff, where Terrible Swift Sword was 100 yards, a hex. Now, you guys can take it from here. Give us a rundown on. Tell you what, let's start with Ross. Give us a rundown on GBACW and what the general scale of GBACW is.
Sure. So most of them, the kind of modern games, at least that I've played, so from Death Valley forward, and now I'm playing Into the Woods by Swords and Bayonets. Most of those are going to be 110 yards per hex. So that's kind of they can range a little bit up or down from there. That's kind of the go-to. I think there's a reason for that with the hex sizes too. I think you end up with like precisely a mile basically over 16 hexes or something, which is helpful as a mental model. And then of course, like you said, you're getting this at the order of battle level, you're getting down to the scale is going to be brigade level. And that's really what you're playing, is shuffling brigades around, even though the command structure goes up higher than that. And even more recently, you're almost getting down to battalion, not quite to company level or something, but you've got battalions. You got breakdown counters for brigades too. So you get a little more even zoomed in that case, or a little bit more control at that granular level. So in my experience, that's kind of the terrain scale, at least. So Alan is playing a battle out of the expansion for Death Valley right now. You also get some variation in the scale of the elevation. So you might get these 50-yard rises versus there's things in, so Newburn in By Swords and Bayonets, I think that has 10-foot elevations or something. It's basically no elevation. So you get a little bit of variation. It's nice that the system can basically accommodate that without much more than just having to say it. And then you get some modifiers possibly, depending on those very minor scale changes. But really, you don't need a whole new system to have a difference between a crest line that's 10 feet versus 50 feet. You can just tweak slightly in the rules.
I want that elevation thing, because the Newburn one actually brings up a good case. So I haven't played in a while, but I do like the World War II MP's tactical combat system. And they have an elevation model in there for determining line of sight that I think blows away anything else out there, where you can find, I mean, if you've got, okay, I mean, most all maps since the 50s and 60s, well, I don't know too much about the ones like the early Gettysburg ones in the 50s, but maybe the 70s, where there are, and we'll take like current GBACW where it's colored elevation, and that maybe one elevation is covering like a 1 hex width, and the next one's like a 2, and then maybe there's the top of the elevation, the ridge line or a hill is 3 or 4 hexes. Well, the TCS has a system where it helps you determine where the center point is, and whether or not a unit whether or not the center of the hex is sitting to the left of the high point or sitting, maybe on the forward slope of it. And it's funny because it took me about 5 or 10 tries at it to figure out how the system worked, and it worked really good. And once I got it down, I was able to almost just instantly look. If I couldn't see it right away, I could do the formula real quick, but instantly look and see, oh, nope, those 4 Panzers are sitting back just on the back side of that crest. Nobody can see them. And when, with us playing the Newburn game, I mean, it even says it in the rules. It says 10 foot and it doesn't affect line of sight. And maybe I'm misreading that. Is there better clarification for that? Or should we still be using because 10 foot, most human beings aren't 10 foot tall. And a 10-foot change of elevation is somebody's up, on that highest point, and he's in the 2nd or 3rd hex of that high point, and somebody's down 3 levels, 30 feet below. Are we still saying, no, you can't see him to shoot at him?
If I remember in Newburn, it has to do with the cost of moving up and down that terrain more than although it does affect line of sight, you're right. And I don't know. I don't know the answer to your question. I have to look at the book again.
Yeah.
Well, it also depend upon how big the hexes are. If the hexes are, the 100 yards, 100 to 150 yards, which most GBACWs are, then you've got a much less slope, a much more gradual slope, almost like what's behind me, in terms of the slopes there. So, that could be. I mean, looking, you mentioned about McDowell. McDowell, there is actually no change to the line of sight there. It's just on the map itself, you got the contour lines much closer to each other. So when you're doing your calculations for that, like I had one today that I was looking at and I'm like, oh, I can shoot at them. And I do the calculations. I'm like, no, I can't, because they're 2 hexes away, but they're up 4 hexes.
Right.
So when you do the math, it comes out to be 2.5 or something like that, which is higher than the middle hex. So, it couldn't be shot at. So the larger hexes, I think the way they've done it is with the contour lines packed together, makes it harder to see and harder to shoot at. Whereas they probably stretch it out. Now I haven't looked at Newburn in detail yet, but they probably stretch it out so you've got more of a plane than you do a hill.
Right. Yeah. You get a lot of games out there. Well, first, let me point out that's Tour Guide Phil.
Hey, there we go.
Yep. Hey, we're already planning a booking for you next fall, Phil. So I'm going to recommend you probably keep the month of October with some availability. So what we're going to do is just real quick. I'm going to try to pick a date sometime, maybe late September, early October next year, and just pass the word out. Probably just a one-day get together. That way, if people that are coming, from way away and they want to plan to come out and spend 2 or 3 days at Gettysburg, I figure we could have one day where just a bunch of us want to get together and you get the pleasure of running us around the battlefield. But I ain't paying for no bus, so it's going to be a convoy. Anyhow, guys, that's Tour Guide Phil. He works for the parks, national parks, and I've not been able to go with him anywhere else, but you want to get a tour guide at Gettysburg, there's your man right there. So, and he can tell you where the hell how to get hold of him, because I don't even know what I can't. Phil, what's the name of the place, the people that you sort of work for? All right, Brian, how you doing? Christopher Smith, good to see you guys here. Okay, so that GBACW. So Ross has been trying to beat that into mine and Todd's head about the elevation count and the distance between or whatever, using they got the big wonderful little schematics on the back of, I think, of the rule books and stuff, which you would think intelligent people would use it, but we don't. Now, what about blind swords and the scale and the unit stuff in that system? And Alan, you take that one.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's no problem. That is definitely much easier, because Herman introduced another concept in there, particularly for woods and other terrain that might be in the way, called obscured. So you're not just blocked and not blocked, you have this thing called obscured. So you can kind of shoot over trees and things like that. So the ability to see things is a little bit different with that. And also too, it subscribes to the traditional wedding cake view of hills. You've got to be on the edge to shoot at somebody downhill. If you're 2 hexes back, sorry, you can't see them, or neither can they. So it kind of subscribes to that methodology, as opposed to the continuous slope philosophy that GBACW has within there. So that makes it a little bit easier for people to understand, because you can look and say, oh, I'm on the edge. Okay, I can look down, and they can look up at me, and we can shoot across there. I know when I was playing Whirlpool back a couple months ago from Longstreet Attacks, there's a couple of odd hexes in there, but once you look and say, oh, you're up above here, and by the way, they actually put the elevation numbers on there, which I think is a big help on the maps now, that they have 4, 3, 4, 5, so forth, to show you the elevations. I think that's a big help for anybody looking at it, to say, oh, okay, I'm on a level 3 or I'm on a level 4, whatever it may be, and then calculate it right there. I know with GBACW that can be a little bit tricky, particularly if you're dealing with color gradations and things like that. So I think there's a little bit more simplicity to it, as well as a few other things that make it easier, like the numbering systems and things like that on there.
Yeah. Now I will say I do really like the let me put that back up. As a matter of fact, I do like the and you can see the elevation numbers right there, the big white circles with numbers in them, and that, and you would have thought, you wonder nobody's done that before, because you think, man, that's such a distraction to the loveliness of the map. But you know what? It's not, and it's a huge benefit to be able to see that stuff. Okay, and And somebody just set it up in there in the chat a minute ago. I wish somebody would do a primer. There you go. One of you guys can tackle that. I'm not about to try to tackle that one.
Yeah, it's the line of sight in GBACW. Someone needs to, and maybe I can just give it a go. Someone needs to do a not scripted necessarily, but like a tight set of videos. I don't think it's that hard. I think it's like there's kind of two rules of thumb. One about the having the hex or hexide closer to the lower unit. You can test that as you're playing visually. You can just test it really quickly. And then there's the geographic crests, which are implied, which is one of the really amazing things about those line of sight rules. But anything that's implied, of course, is going to be harder to you almost have to start to intuit. You can't test it on there as easily. Yeah, you do. You have to understand what it's modeling with the actual terrain. And that's just harder to do if you're not getting the understanding of a geographic crest versus a military crest and how both are modeled in that game. It's going to be like, I don't understand why I can't see here. If you have someone sit down and show you and be like, you're on the backside of a hill that's implied, it starts to make sense. But you almost need the board in front of you to be like, okay, look at this actual example of this. I will say the way the rulebook for GBACW for the series rules, the geographic crest, the optional rule, which I would recommend people play with, it's very tightly worded and very short, and it's very good for explaining precisely what you're supposed to be doing. It doesn't give you any concept of what it's trying to model, really. So you really need someone to match that up and be like, here's what that actually means in reality. And then I think people get it, and you can start to see it on the map, and it's really elegant to not have to continually subdivide something going up in elevation. You can imply that there's a continual coming to a crest. It's pretty amazing, actually.
Okay, so I know that. All right, so Nemesis, the string issue, I'm assuming you're probably talking about blind swords. I can remember in Line of Battle watching, what's his name, did all the tutorial videos, talking about when they were doing the line of sight that the most dominant terrain in a hex. So if you had an elevation change, maybe starting at a creek bed going up, and there were 3 levels of elevation just in that one hex, and the last one, the highest elevation, was just a tiny little sliver that cut around the corner, your unit was considered to be at that elevation. Which, okay, yeah, in a way that kind of makes sense, but I don't think that's always the case. And I mean, I don't struggle too much with GBACW, and I definitely don't struggle with in the line of or in the blind sword stuff. But I think I want to say this because when we get into talking about fire and combat, I want to come back to this, and I think we're going to use Into the Woods as the example for that, and maybe in Black Swan too. So, look, would we classify all 3 systems as tactical? I say yes. Maybe Black Swan is still tactical, but maybe a little less than the other 2. Any argument with that?
No, I think you're right. I kind of think about it this way, and playing both systems and within the Black Swan blind swords thing. I think if you took Black Swan and blind swords together and merged them together, you'd wind up with GBACW.
Oh, good point.
Because you're dealing with 2 different levels. You talked about before. You talked about regiment and brigade at the blind swords level. And then at the Black Swan level, I look at it, you have division and brigade, call it demi brigade, whatever you want to call it, but it's still brigade in terms of your units, and your maneuvering element is at a division level. And, I think that's what Herman has tried to do there, is he realized the limitations after doing Longstreet, that this can't blow up into the full 3 days of Gettysburg. It's just going to break down in a number of ways. So that's where we went to the higher level and then redefined the system, which I think is brilliant, because, you want to be able to do other things in there. And something like GBACW really keeps you very linear. You've got to stay with the tactical side of things and then grow up to it. But I think GBACW also does it very well,
Right.
in its own realm.
Which is now what we're getting ready to talk about, because the next thing in this is command. All right. So, okay, well, we're going to chit chat about, how it's represented in the games and what effects does it have on the play and what effects have it on the units. So, Black Swan, command is when you're looking at the board in the units, you're not looking at leaders. There's no leaders on the board. Okay. You know that these 2 or 3 counters will make up such and such brigade. Okay. And that'll make up the division. You'll know that Brockenbrough and Archer and Davis and Pettigrew, you're going to know they're part of Heath's division. Okay. You're going to know who everybody and what they belong to. And then he applies the color coordination to the 1st brigade of each one, the 2nd brigade, the colors to the different brigades in each of the divisions. And it easy to define. You're not thinking about, well, actually, we'll save that part. But your command in this game is going to come from the cards you draw and your division priority list, which those of you that have Black Swan and have not played it, you're going to be awestruck by how division priority works. I just played 2 days of Chickamauga, okay? And if, much like Phil says there, cusser, well, I got news for you. While I was playing that game, I was a much better cusser than whoever you're talking about that game, because how many times I had a division commander like Heineman, who I needed to be on the offensive, roll a 1 and get no orders and not do nothing. So your command is handled there. And now you're going to draw a core commander's card using the cards. That's your chit act. That's your chit draw for that system. Or you might draw what they call a CIC card, which in that game there would have been Rosecrans or maybe Thomas or Polk or something like that. They all have which Herman does a great job of mixing those things in at a certain time during the battle where that effect may have actually happened historically. But you might get that chit and you're thinking, oh man, I'd roll the dice. Oh boy, I get to activate 2 divisions of the 3 that are in this core. And then you go over and the guy you need to activate DP1, you roll a 1. And then it turns out, you got to use the same dice roll for both divisions. Well, guess what? Division number 2 under 1, he has no orders. So you just drew a super stellar card. You rolled a super stellar die roll on the core activation. And then you went over to division priority. And guess what? Nobody's doing anything. But then you ask yourself, was the Civil War not like that anyhow? Because I'm safe to say it was. All right. Now, blind swords. Al, I'm going to let you jump on this one. There's really no leaders on the board in that either. Am I right in that?
Right.
So
right. They're all through the command. That's about it. Yeah, they're all through the command there, and you're just activating the chits, and there's activation rolls to see if they do stuff, and that could be kind of painful if you get some bad rolls. Which if you look at my Manassas one, we got some really bad rolls. I couldn't believe it. So it's a little tough, and I that's where jumping just back a second to the Black Swan system. That's where I think what Herman has done in there is slightly better than the higher level command in Great Battles, because you have that choice. You're laid out with that. You know what you're putting for the priorities, and you're trying to lay that all out. So you're given a little bit more control with it. Not to say that you don't have it with Great Battles, but you're laying it all out, and then it's not the randomness of the chit pull. It's the randomness of the dice that allows you to do anything or not. Which it's kind of like, okay, I gave an order, but did they follow it? Nope, nobody followed it for whatever reason. Courier didn't make it, they ignored it, whatever. And that's perfect for Rocket Chickamauga, because that's the command structure that Bragg had down there. I mean, it was a mess. To be quite honest, he was lucky to get where he got.
Yeah. And the opportunities that, well, I'm always going to go back to, a good example of confusion in command is, the Union mishap for the movement and the big hole opening up and Longstreet launching an attack at the same time, because there's no way he saw that happening, because he was deep in the woods when he, so yeah, I mean, it works. And I think if you took Black Swan any deeper than that, I think it might hurt the system.
Right.
But now, how does command get started in Blind Swords?
Well, yeah, I mean, you're still basically, getting your chits set up, much like you're getting your cards set up, but you really don't have an opportunity to pick your command. And that's kind of what you have down at the regimental level. The orders came down for you for these guys to go, and some went and some didn't. Now I'll point to the Whirlpool that I just played, which I think was probably one of the best games that I played, because each side, it was activating at the brigade level, and you're only going to be aware of that one brigade that you're moving. And the coordination is a little luck, it's a little bit of skill, and I'll highlight to say that's a little bit of skill, because you've got to play the right chits in there and hope they come up at the right time, so that you can continue your attack. But one of the things within there, you do have some chits that allow you to do that, but it takes experience to get there, because there's a momentum chit in there that allows you to continue your attack or continue with another brigade within the division to be able to push on. And that's key to playing that scenario, because otherwise you're just slamming back and forth into each other, and it's just like what the battle was. It was just throwing more Union troops into it and throwing more Confederate troops into it, and just slamming into each other. But if you play it right,
activation in Blind Swords, though, okay, much like me rolling a no orders on a division priority, your leaders, I mean, okay, so I say there's no leaders on the board, but you still have your core division commanders or whatever that have to roll to even be able to execute anything.
Yeah, your brigade commanders, yes, or your division commanders, I should say, yes.
And when they fail that roll, it's limited activation.
Limited activations, yep. Which only can shoot if you got something in front of you. You can't move, you can't rally, you can't do anything else. Just basically defend yourself while you're up there. And that limits you in terms of what you can do, which is good in a close fight like the Whirlpool, because you're just defending yourself over there, not just being run over. And a couple times it can work out. A lot of times it doesn't, because you're just you're shooting blindly, and it's only one unit or one stack shooting at one hex. You can't combine the units and anything else when you got that limited activation. So it really holds you back. When they fail, you're stuck. You can't do anything beyond there.
Well, and then when you pass two, what is there, like one of 3 or 4 orders that you can give, and in the Blind Swords, you give that order, it applies to everybody in the formation. There's no
in the brigade
do one thing and somebody do something else.
Right, and within the brigade, because once the division is activated, you pick a brigade. So let's say you got 4 brigades. Think of Whirlpool again, where you have Caldwell's division, and you've got Brooke and the other ones on there, and then you pick that one brigade, and they can do same 4 types of orders that you have with the Black Swan system. You can attack, defend, maneuver, and rally. Okay, and you pick one of those, and each one of those have its certain characteristics in terms of attacking or defending or maneuvering and such, but it also has its own limitations. With your maneuvering, much like we have with the march mode in Great Battles, you can't get close to enemy units. You got to stay at least 1 hex back. You can't engage, because they have the concept of engagement over there. Same thing with attacking. With attacking, yeah, you can attack other units, but you can't do other things like rally, and your movement's a little bit more restricted and so forth within there. So you do have some control over that, and you're really controlling at the brigade level. Your maneuver element is the brigade, and your individual units are within that brigade that your command is there. But you're really dictated by whether you get the call to go in or not from a leader.
Well, okay, and I know with chit draw, and I've got games where, like, I'm playing BCS right now, where you just alternate sides and you pick whichever unit you want to activate. And I wonder if a lot of people get lost in this. Wait a minute, before I address that, I need to address this issue. Achilles, I'm going to send you a link to a dice rolling school when playing tabletop miniatures on Tabletop Simulator, because you know my opinion of your dice rolls in that game the other night. So we're going to fix that, buddy. I got you all set up. I'm even going to pay for you to go. I watched him play that night, and he was just, his rolls were hideous. So, okay, now it's a little harder to do this in the Black Swan because your turns are well, I don't know. I guess that really wouldn't matter, but your turns are 1 hour in there. Whereas in Ross, we're going to get to command with GBACW here in a second. 20 minutes, I think, in GBACW. No, 15 minutes. If you broke it down by the number of activations, I guess, because the game turns are still an hour. And then the blind swords is that running in an hour too on the game turn?
Generally less than an hour. It varies from module to module, but
Okay.
generally it's an hour. No, there's not 15 minutes or anything like that. It's generally 20 minutes, 30 minutes. I think there's one or two, I can't remember which ones, that are like 45 minutes, and some are an hour.
Well, and I know Todd and I always have this. We have this discussion probably once every month or two. And if you don't know this as a gamer, when you're playing, and of course a lot of us probably play by ourselves, everything is happening at the same time. So to me, doing the chit draw, I like it the most because it just means to me that Pettigrew's brigade acted a split second faster than the Iron Brigade did when their chit got to. So they're going to get the first opportunity to cause a little surprise or a little havoc. So whenever I get a game that I can play with a blind draw, a chit draw, whether the rules call for it or not, I'm going to do it. Even, well, like I say, all the BCS games until this one I'm playing right now, this is East Front, so I'm trying to enjoy it because I love that East Front stuff. But I've always played blind chit draw. So, because I think that's just, to me, that's just more, because I might have, you might have a plan for Robinson's division in the First Corps. And you're like, okay, here we go. I know what I'm going to do with him. And boom, Rhodes draws first. And he's off and running. And he's moved into a spot that you were going to occupy and set up a defensive line. And to me, that works good. The only other thing that I can say is it's still, in my opinion, still the better system is, I don't know how many people play it. I don't know if you two guys have ever touched it, but the Gamers MMP, the Civil War Brigade series, that order writing system, and that one, granted, there's a lot of depth to it, but nothing can give you a bigger headache when you see something going on and you've been given orders by your corps commander and you can't change those orders. I mean, that'll just drive you up. The Chickamauga game I played in that just drove me up the wall because I could not get units to change what they were doing. So, all right. We know what Black Swan does. Card draws, division priority. Blind Swords is chit draw, roll to see if they're going to actually do anything. If not, they're going to go limited, or they're going to get, one of four orders that you're going to assign to them, and the whole formation stays in it. Now, here comes the fun one. Ross, let's talk about command in GBACW. Definitely a deeper scale, a deeper dive, much more details. So how does that function in GBACW? And this, I know there's a lot of players out there that they struggle with units being out of command, a regiment being out of command, a brigade commander being out of command from his division commander, the division commander being out of command range from the overall. All you.
Yep. So I suppose the difference here is that the command is, the efficiency of command is determined at the top of each turn in a determine efficiency phase. And it has to do with how the communication line between these leaders. And you have counters for your leaders on the board, depending on the order of battles. You might have an overall commander. You might have a corps commander. You will almost certainly have division leaders and brigade leaders on the board. You really need all of them to be able to communicate with each other, and then the brigade leaders to their regiments to most efficiently move your guys and make them fight, which is the heart of the game, is moving their brigades and making them shoot and breaking the other guy. That's the fun of it. That's the heart of the game. to most effectively do that, you basically end up playing a mini game of maintaining this command structure and this communication lines between your leadership. And it has major implications, because if you fall out of command at any level in there, you start to lose efficiency. So either your division leaders have fewer chits in the cup, so when you're doing the chit draw, you're just going to go fewer times, or your brigade leaders, if they are out of command of their division leader, when that chit is drawn, they will need to sit out one of those activations as well. If you're playing a game, typically the GBACW efficiencies, which is how many activation chits you're going to put in the hat, 2, 3, 4 is really high. Sometimes they're 1, but really 2 and 3 is where they're at. If you draw the 2 and you're out of command, you're going to go 1 time, you're losing a lot of efficiency. I mean, it's appropriately named. You're losing a lot of effectiveness in playing. I think it's great. Also, the movement of these, because they are represented as chits, and you can move them around at different periods. So a brigade leader, you can move with a brigade during its activation. Division leader, you can do that as well with any of its brigades. The corps commanders and the overall commanders, they move at the end of the turn. So you can try to, again, you're playing this second game in the back of your mind when you're maneuvering, looking ahead to the next turn. Can I keep this line of communication open? Can I keep my leaders on roads to minimize the amount of MP we're spending to talk to each other? And then at the end, you can move your corps commander and hopefully keep people in command, be efficient the next turn. But that moving, this is also, it sounds unique. I haven't played Blind Swords and Black Swan, but this sounds like the commanders are more important in GBACW at even a more granular tactical level, because they can help on like cohesion roles. Having a brigade leader sitting on top of a disordered unit, when they roll to rally, you will get a benefit from having that leader in the hex with them, helping them out. That also freezes their movement, though. So again, you have this tactical decision to make. Do I go help them rally, but now I can't move over here to do something else? Or do I, go do something else and they rally on their own? I really like that. That top of the turn efficiency phase is complicated, especially in the big scenarios, for tracking who's out of command, how much efficiency you have. It takes time. You could spend 30, 40 minutes on a big scenario figuring out just that. But it also feels more like a simulation at that point. Like, I've really determined who's in command, who's talking, who's not, and they have an effect on the battlefield. So it sounds like it's a little bit more involved. I think the payoff, to my taste, is probably there. I really like that game of positioning these single guy chits where they're most efficient, and you make tactical decisions as you're going. So not only for the rally example, but your division leader, if you want to do some really cool maneuver and do this like super tactical flank with a brigade, you might be sending them out of command. So you need to understand next turn, they're not going to be as efficient moving, but you might have this crazy move where they've almost taken independent command and gone up. So that's my kind of long-winded description of how it works, but I think there's a lot going on there, and it creates a lot of tactical decisions, a whole other layer of tactical decisions about maneuver.
Well, yeah, and like, I know one of the things that I think it was in New Bern, I was thinking about it. You get these brigades with all these. God, I don't even want to go down this road. Let's say we'll take a brigade. Let's take Gordon's brigade at Gettysburg. I think he had, it was 6 or 8 regiments, 7 or 8 regiments or whatever coming down that pike. And it doesn't matter in any game, but I'll just use that as an example. You get a unit that you want to get that leader on, that brigade leader, to rally. Okay. And Jubal Early's command range is 8. And all your regiments are together. The brigade leader's sitting on one of the regiments, so he's got command of all his regiments, even if the far regiment was outside of his command range, because they're all in a line. But you get a guy out there on the other end and you want to rally him, and he's got kind of a weak morale, which Gordon's going to have weak morale. But you said, man, I can get my leader out there. Well, you pick that leader up and you move him. And of course, the leader he can attempt to rally after he moves, or he can rally and not move the unit that's underneath. But now you just move that guy to where he's outside that 8 hex range of early. And granted, and for those of you that play GBACW, keep in mind that you're in command. If during the command where you're determining command at the beginning of the turn, if you're in command, you're in command for the whole turn.
Yeah, that's true. You test it at the beginning of the turn.
Yeah, but you've got to remember, and I'm guessing what that's saying is that, hey, he's been given his orders. He knows what he's to do for this next hour. So, but then you got to remember too that when that next turn starts, now he's not in command. You know, he gets that 2 chit, that 2 EM, and now he's not. He's going to get 1 unless he happens to get a lot of. There's some pluses on his, which is, you know, I think that's another good thing about the game is putting those modifiers on leaders that were more efficient and negative modifiers on leaders that weren't. But and you know, we did this for the first time I ever did it in a game. Throw some quick stuff out there real quick on brigade coordination, because I bet you a lot of players don't use it.
Sure. So again, when you're drawing for activations, the chit draw in GBACW is at the division level typically. So you're drawing a division leader, an amount of chits, you put them in the cup, you're going to draw 1 out. So let's say it's Sherman. So you draw Sherman as a division leader, and then you're going to be able to activate his brigades. And let's say he has 3 brigades. Typically, you would activate them in turns. You would activate, you know, whoever's brigade first, do all their stuff, including their fire and shock attacks. Move to the next one, their movement, fire, shock. The next one, movement, fire, shock. The defender, though, while you're doing all of that, can basically have their reaction moves and the reaction fire per brigade activation. So they would get 3 opportunities, let's say, for artillery fire on each brigade as you activate them in turn. One of your options with your division leader, when you pull their chit, is what if I try to coordinate these 3 brigades, or as many of them as you can? That's going to be based on a roll, how many of them you can coordinate. And in fact, you may create additional command confusion and lose your opportunity to do anything. So of course, there's a tactical trade-off there as well, based on the roll. But if you can coordinate them, so if you know, the Newburn that Wardrobe and Hexy have been playing, that Jeff did successfully coordinate 2 brigades, which is all you needed to do. And you were able to move this entire line up towards these earthworks, which is great because they have artillery bearing down on you, and they basically get 1 shot at 1 guy rather than multiples. And you really denied him a lot of firepower. But that's because you rolled well enough to coordinate too. You could have rolled where you got stuck and lost the turn completely, essentially.
Roll to 0.
And I'm thinking that's a rule that I know that when I play some more GBA, I'm going to really look to see, because I never looked at it from that aspect, you know, all that return fire. Because like Into the Woods, what you're messing with now, I keep thinking about the Cleburne conundrum right there at the start, and all the fire that can get poured into him right there in his division right there. And it's now knowing that if I was to coordinate different brigades, I mean, you guys out there that in the GBACW playing world, I mean, the easiest way I can think of saying it is you're turning multiple brigades into 1 brigade for, right, you know, when it comes to the enemy. So yeah, okay.
You get nastier shocks too for your own purposes. You can really load up a shock across brigades if you need to do that. The trade-off there, though, again, and this is the fun part, is the decision making. You might, you know, you send everyone into shock, and you might have multiple brigades become combat ineffective because they will auto disorder at the end of that. So you really do have to be careful. I also quickly with the command thing, I wanted to mention, I will say, I like early war, you know, I like 62 stuff. The command structure is not as hardened then with, you don't always have corps commanders, and there's these kind of complex command structures. So I'm playing Into the Woods, for instance. Well, the Union doesn't even have corps organization yet. And the way the series rules are written for GBACW, they really want you to have an overall commander, a corps commander, a division leader, and a brigade leader. You often don't have that with the order of battle on one side or the other, and you get tricky, battle book rules, battle specific rules about how to account for that again add quite a bit of complexity. If an easy one, for instance, would be like in Death Valley, where Jackson is often acting as a division leader, division commander, as well as a leader of his own brigade, Stonewall Brigade. Well, he's got one counter on the map, so you move him at different times because of that, and he's kind of operating at two different levels, and you have to try to keep that in your mind. That can be tricky too, to understand, trying to fit awkward command structures, which were much more common at the beginning of the war, into a system that really would love a nice tidy command structure. It just, again, it adds that 15, 20 minutes as you're trying to figure out all this at the beginning that makes it for a long, involved game.
It's funny because I think about, it's so because we weren't there. I know we all missed it by a couple of days, but how can, I know for me, I can't possibly fathom how it was. Pete, how you doing, buddy? Hockey season. I can't possibly fathom when I could just pick up a radio and call fire, or pick up my radio and tell my sister shadow unit, who's 1.5 miles to my left, where I need you to go. I'm trying to picture a brigade leader. Now, granted, he's going to have a staff and aides, and he's going to have runners or whatever. But I'm trying to picture a brigade leader who has 2,000, 2,500 men in 5 or 6 regiments spread across the front, which, go to Gettysburg and look at the left and right markers. But when these units got to Gettysburg, I mean, what the 20th Maine, they went in with 1,000 men, and at Gettysburg, they were 250. So I think to myself, I remember when I first started understanding them. Rolo, how you doing, buddy? I started thinking, okay, well, 250 men, and I'm thinking, oh man, I got to go look at these left and right markers. And we see that wonderful movie, the 19 or 2000, whatever, the Gettysburg movie, and of course they're shooting film, and you're thinking, first off, there was more than 250 men they had, I want to say, in that. But when you're filming it to get the dramatics out of it, it looks like this massive long line. 250 men in a double rank is probably not that big of a stretch. And then you're going to bend those guys back in a V. I mean, how many men do you think? Let's say they had all 250 when they did that. 125 in a 2-man line or two line. Well, I mean, they were in the woods, so it's probably a little staggered, and they had taken casualties. That little V could not have been that big. So, I commend them for what they did. But when you see that on the battlefield, and then but you think to yourself, I see some of these early war regiments. Now, granted, in GBACW, it's each strength point is 50 men, but still, I'm trying to picture a guy. And I got news for you. I think when you're on the move on an attack, the guy waving a flag probably ain't doing much for you. All right. And from what I understand, bugle calls could get really, really mixed during that stuff. And there's no way he's screaming down the line. And I'm sure there are many, 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 even cardboard, many, yeah, thanks, Phil. That's right. Instances that you could find in books. And I know you guys do a lot of reading, where, well, I mean, I guess the second day at Gettysburg would be a prime example that, hey, this regiment takes off, and maybe his sister or the regiment to his left, they're divided by some thick woods or something, or maybe the brigade to the left is supposed to follow an echelon. They don't see that move. I know there's 1,000 cases like that easily where it.
Oh yeah.
So with something like that in mind, do any of these 3 games, I guess you would have to say, well, do any of these 3 games represent that in command? It would have to be it's definitely a fall to war thing. So I mean, I know that in Black Swan, the die roll for division priority would take care of that. In Blind Swords, your activation roll would take care of that. You know, maybe Robertson Brigade executes his, but you need Anderson to execute with him at the same time, and Anderson fails his activation. But how in GBACW? Because you're going to get the order regardless.
Yeah, I don't think it does. Beyond the command range for the brigade leaders, if they have their orders changed by their divisional leader from attack to advance or something, if a regiment is out of command, they won't receive the order because they're not hearing it or whatever, or not paying attention. But that kind of ground, like really regimental level confusion or even lack of guts or something to move, that's really not modeled in GBACW, I don't think. You have, if you're in command, they're going to do what you want. All of them are going to do the same. You don't have kind of any randomness there that it sounds like you have, at least in Blind Swords with the activation stuff, that I find really interesting. That attracts me to want to try Blind Swords, at least to know, because you get this great storytelling, like, God, these guys would just never do more than a minor activation or whatever it's called, limited activation. Just could never get them to like hustle. Well, okay, there's a whole story there, and that did happen all the time for all kinds of reasons. GBACW, if you can keep that command structure, they're going to do what you want every time.
Well, yeah, and okay, so another thing too that crosses my mind is you've got
to. Let me just toss in here 1 second, if I could, because I think you've got a fine line between the two of them. Yeah, with playing both of them. I'm actually torn between which one is better at the regimental level, because you do get that chaos, that ultimate. I don't know what these guys are going to do, because even your opponent is going to potentially play a chit on you like command confusion, which could toss your whole plan out the window in a second, and things like that, which is great. And Ross, to your point, it is one in GBACW where once the orders are done, you go in. But I find definitely with a 2-player game where you have the reactions, both firing, movement, refusal, all that kind of stuff, in particular with the cavalry. I think the cavalry in GBACW is the best I've seen so far. That right there creates enough of the chaos to somewhat simulate it. Not much. I had one case the other day playing Rutherford's Farm where West Virginia Brigade, well, this is one of Jeff's West Virginia brigades, came in and attacking with his brethren from Ohio, while the Ohio Brigade disordered. So when they shocked, they didn't do anything. They got tossed back. West Virginian kept going. They actually beat them and actually had to go in. So they had to advance. When they did, they were now surrounded by Confederate units on two sides as well as the back. And so consequently, they could just, the one on, I think, the left just pivoted around and now was on its flank. So now they shocked back on their next activation and just, blasted them right out of there, with the whole thing. So I think my point being is I think that the confusion and the randomness is really between the players and the play, as opposed to the chits dictating it for you within Blind Swords, Black Swan. So that would be my take on the difference. But I think they're still there. I think they're still there. You just got to kind of look for it with great battles.
Well, okay, and also so I'm gonna. Okay, if you're in an offensive motion, okay, here's your plan of battle. I want your division of 4 brigades to drive straight through Devil's Den, straight up Little Round Top. No. Let's take that back. Let's go to the original plan. I want you to drive up the Emmitsburg Road on the right side of the road, headed towards the Cemetery Hill High Ground. Okay, that's your 4 brigades in your division. Okay. All right. Everybody gets off on their attack. All 4 brigades get off on their attack just as it was drawn up. Just perfect timing. Everybody's moving all at the same time. Then a change happens in the battlefield. Suddenly, 2 Union brigades show up on your right flank. Okay, now I'm going to go to the Germans in World War II, and I think we might have had this discussion before, where higher command and trusted their lower level leaders to make strategic or tactical decisions on the fly. Is that even, I mean, I know there's stories out there where a company commander or a brigade commander said, oh, no, I need to turn here and go there because I see this coming. But is that even represented in any of these three systems? Or a lower level like that, like a brigade leader? I mean, yeah, okay, so I know in Blind Swords, you roll the initiative, let's talk about Robertson and Anderson. Robertson is off doing his thing. Anderson, his strategy is to follow on his right side in an echelon, but boom, a Union brigade shows up on the right side. Now, on Blind Swords, should it all fall the way it's supposed to, Robertson gets his activation, does his thing, and then Anderson follows up, and now they know that brigade's there, and Anderson rolls and he gets his activation. Okay, all you're going to do is give him his order type, so he could turn right on them. But do we have that representation in GBACW? And in Black Swan, yeah, I can change whenever I want when I go to execute my order. And I would guess in GBACW, if you have the activations for a brigade, that brigade can simply switch and he can divert. But then where's the penalty? And I'm going to say the penalty is now you're breaking up the command, which I'm learning each time I play GBACW what a bad freaking idea that is.
Also, if you need to switch between, in that case, you're going to be switching between either advance and attack mode, one way or another, depending on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to do it once you're activating brigades like that, the penalty is you can also have a very poor brigade activation or brigade orders change roll that could result in you doing a stand result where you can't move. So
yeah,
at the beginning you get these divisional orders where you can just, if you're in command, you just issue it, and that's the division leader saying what you're doing. That's the plan A. You want to do what you just said. Then you get this flank. You're now at the brigade orders change level of trying to deal with that, and it's a roll. I mean, you're not guaranteed to do it, and some of the results are very bad. Again, you're dealing with a game of maximizing efficiency with limited activations. Losing one entirely while you try to go into advanced mode and look to your right or whatever, you might get stuck.
Right.
You might also pull it off.
And I love that in those, each one of the three systems has that effect, the failed activation, the out of command or the try to change. Yeah. I mean, come on. I knew we would spend a lot of time on command. Come on. I mean, linear warfare, command is it. I mean, what I think about it, command can be it through any period of war, any era. It doesn't matter. If you don't have, if the right leadership is not in the right place at the right time, or the right decision is made at the right time, which that's never going to happen 100%. Matter of fact, it's probably on the lesser end of it happening. In the American Civil War is it's perfect for that. Napoleonics is perfect for that. But I think that all three of the systems, in their own little way, have something that handles that. Yeah. Maybe not to the depth that we might see it when we read stories or narratives or something, but I think all three of the systems have something that handles that.
Just throw it out one point to that. I think Blind Swords may have the slight edge on that with the chit system, because the chits are tailored for the battle. So you're going to get specific ones that are going to really hone in on some aspect of the battle that could do it. A good example, it's in a lot of them, people have probably seen it, probably love it, is the Rebel Yell. That allows you to take a stack of regiments that are just sitting there right in front, ready to pound through, and just says, here we go, boys, let's go get them. And later games have added in a huzzah from the Union perspective to do that similar way of doing it. So game by game, there, you get this in there, and I think the developers of the game of Blind Swords really see that in there and really focus in to get the right combination and the right chits and what they do within there. So I give a slight edge to blind swords for that.
Right. Well, and I'm going to say, Arthur, this is just my consensus on what you just said right there in that last sentence. I think that's a wonderful problem to have because it's going to make you play them. It's going to make you go back and forth. All right. So, yeah, look, Nord, it's going to be Sickles. All right. McMurray's not on here to stand up, but we have to say it's got to be Sickles. I got to defend my buddy. Let's see. All right. That's for 20th Maine. Okay. I got you. I want to catch up on some before we get to the next one here. Micromanage, probably why. I do think blind swords more realistic about command and control unreliability. Okay. All right.
I like the micromanagement aspect too. I realize that's not for everyone. I like bookkeeping. I like tracking all of that. I like to create a spreadsheet to manage the command and all that. I understand that's some people like to play the game also, but I like the side stuff.
Yeah, well, I'm not gonna lie. The two of you strike me as okay, and you can sit here and tell me I'm wrong. You call me a liar, but I'm going to guarantee that I'm right in both cases. That the two of you, and maybe not all the time, but I'll bet you because I do it slightly. I'll guarantee you that you've had periods where you've stood over a board for a half an hour, thinking, do I want to do this or am I going to go that way? Or studying the situation. I don't do it as much in the ACW stuff, but when I'm playing like I'm playing BCS and that's maneuver, I do. I will sit there and OCS was another one I'll try to think about, that. But I don't do it. And I really should because I guess this was where replaying. All right. So this is just a general question for you out there in chat. How many of you replay a game or a scenario more than 2 times? All right, for chat. You two don't even need to answer that. So,
yeah, multiple here for sure. Yeah, and I actually this is one reason I prefer to play a lot of these games async. Is like I want to have half a day to stare at it and think about it while I'm at work before I do my thing. It takes forever to play a game, especially GBACW. I've played battles and scenarios that over the table take 3 hours. They took a month to play, but you get a different experience because you can really think about every single little move. That being said, if I'm playing with somebody in person over the table, I respect that other people like to move the game along, and I'll just make a decision and see how it plays out. I will not analysis paralysis someone else to death. But if I'm playing async, I will.
I'm on board with Nemesis. Way too many games to play. Way too many.
Ross, we got to get a game together. You sound exactly like me.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. We should.
I'll
let them study it.
Video. Y'all got to have video on that one. So
here's my take on it. Let me just toss my 2 cents on it. A little bit different. I think of these games, and given the price of them these days, I think of these games as like a good bottle of wine or a good European beer or something like that. I'm not just going to guzzle these things down. I'm going to sit there and enjoy this. I'm going to sip this thing and really enjoy the whole game and really get the whole thing out of it. Because, of course, I'm a history guy, too. So I want to see all angles of it, too, with the whole thing. So I look at these as kind of like, yeah, this is my going out for a night and having a really good dinner. I'm not just going to go out for, McDonald's. I'm going to go, 5-star.
You say wine or drink. How about a good bacon cheeseburger?
I'm there.
I go for the full immersion as well. If I'm playing, I'm playing Into the Woods, and I actually think I'm going to make a video about this, but I'm playing Into the Woods now, the GBACW game, the big scenario. Also just ordered like 6 Shiloh books. I'm going to be deep in all of them. I'm on the National Archives website looking at, images of Shiloh stuff and all this. I'll be in Shiloh through the winter for sure. I'll be deep in that. And then I'll move to the next thing, but you're not going to hear me or see me talking about much else other than Shiloh. So sorry, everyone.
Ross, put your channel in the chat there.
Yeah.
For Tony.
That's
Tony,
that's good. I think that's great because you get so much out of it. I'll take it one step further and say, if you lock onto a regiment or something, particularly on the Union side, because it's a lot more available than on the Confederate side, there's no doubt you may be able to find their history of the regiment, and reading that is just fantastic and you can usually find it out on the internet. through the Internet Archives or something out there. I've found a ton of them already, and it's so fascinating because you look at it and it's GBACW. It is Black Swan and Blind Swords right there, and it just so adds so much more flavor to it. So I hear you, Ross. Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out why our damn names aren't showing up.
You don't have Todd here to run the StreamYard for you.
I know. I need him there.
There you go.
Are they showing up now? Oh, they are.
Yeah,
There you go. There you go.
Right. That was driving me crazy. Never said I was an IT guy, even though. All right. All right. Let's,
You're a database guy.
I knew we'd spend some time on that. So let's. There you go. Go check him out too. And you got to put your buddies up there too.
I gotta dig his up.
We need to get him.
It's linked from mine. You can find mine. I only have one video up where my buddy and I have done a playthrough of Big Bethel from By Swords and Bayonets. I got some other stuff in the pipe that I'm trying to just get edited and ready to go.
I would recommend it. It's long, but I would recommend it. It's good multi-session video.
It is long. Yeah, it's
about
3 hours to settle in.
For all of those you out there,
Good.
this is
good
it.
though.
These are the only 3 people that are doing this stuff, with wardrobe and playing this stuff online, so you guys can see this stuff. So I mean, come on. I mean, GBACW, it's deep, and it's amazing that I can do it because I have 0 patience, and I want it now. It's just the way it is, but that ought to say something about the system, because you can keep me bouncing around like a cat that loves to play the system and it's still my favorite system, then it's got to be worth something, right? So, all right, let's get off Command. For those of you out there that ever want to grill anybody about Command, go over to their page. I know my email is on mine. I would imagine these guys in their title is probably on theirs too. Send them a message, send them an email. You can probably find them on Facebook. If you got a question to ask, if you can't, if you reach out to Bill Byrne or even Alan Stig, Dick, any of those guys, anybody you see play, and you got something you want to ask about a question, I know that all 3 of us are always willing to answer. So if we can help at all, I mean,
I'll put out a cheap plug for the design team. If people don't know the design team, and Hex, I know you have met them in person. These guys are awesome in terms of getting back to you and communicating and doing everything. The support behind the scenes is wonderful. With the system. So, reach out to these guys. They're all over the place. And if you put a question up on Board Game Geek or anywhere, they'll answer it right away.
It's going to be answered in an hour. Bill Byrne he must have it hooked into his brain directly or something.
Meta glasses on all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Movement and maneuver. And my note to this was formations and limitations. We probably already dabbled into some of this. We've actually dabbled into a lot of the last 3 or 4 items here. But movement and maneuver. Okay. All of the games have a mode or formation type of thing in it. Okay, whether it's attack, assault, attack, defend, maneuver, regroup, recover, whatever. Okay, they've all got something. GBACW narrow the field on that one there. I think it's 1 less than the other 2 systems, but you're in all of the games, you have to, if you want to accomplish a certain thing, there's going to be a specific formation you need to be in. Okay. And let's start with GBACW. There's what, 3?
Yeah, there's 3 sets of orders you can. It's just 3, right? There's march orders, advance orders, and attack orders.
It is reserve.
Yes, and you could be in reserve. You're right. I have been playing stuff that is relatively short, so you don't end up being in reserve. It doesn't matter, but yes. And each of those is representing, I mean, the march, you're typically marching in column and taking advantage of trying to move a lot. And it is interesting in GBACW. I'll be curious if the other systems do this. I really like that march in GBACW is represented by the single march activation chit that goes into the cup. And when you draw it, your units that are under march orders can take up to 4 activations worth of movement all at once. So you can really warp them around the map. There are trade-offs with fatigue and other things doing that, but you can really try to get them in position. They are extremely vulnerable when they are in march orders or march formation in column. But again, an interesting thing of how far do you want to march them up before you pause and put them in one of the more aggressive postures that you can do.
I remember when I first started playing and I hadn't gotten deep enough into the march orders. And I remember I didn't realize that it was its own little thing. I thought, you could put units in a division, like one of the brigades was in march order. And then when the brigade activated, you would move those guys in march order. And then I realized, that's when I realized, hey, this 4th brigade from Heath was behind Pender's entire division, for an example. Now I can't freaking move him through the road. And I didn't. So I do like the fact that in the march order that there's no priority of who you move first or second. You can do it. And once I divvied that out of the rules, I was like, oh, okay. And is that a good one? I think it's an excellent rule to get because you can really move a lot of stuff a long ways.
I think from a game perspective, also marching guys onto the board from reinforcements is just not exciting. There is some tactical decision making about positioning and all that. Getting that over with, get them up. You want to bring them for the kind of flavor and storytelling of where they came in off the board. Let's just march them onto the board and get them into doing the exciting stuff, not keep drawing a march chit and I march them a little bit more forward. I march them a little bit more forward. Let's just march them in the game and get them in.
Yeah. And then you got attack and defend, and in attack, you can close on enemy units. Defend, you can't.
Advance. So there is no kind of official defensive posture to be in. You are assumed to be defending if you're approached, and you might get prep fire bonuses in certain cases. Although I will say if you're under attack orders, you cannot retreat before shock. So you are assumed to be ready for a fight. You're not kind of on edge waiting to pull back if you get attacked. So even on the defensive side, there's implications of being under attack orders. But yes, attack is how you close with the enemy and either fire from 1 hex away and or move in for the shock attack, which is really pretty gnarly in GBACW. Your units will automatically disorder at the end, and they can really, Alan was mentioning this, you get a lot of chaos in that shock phase because depending on the role, you get the gravity of the shock, and the scrum starts to pull units away from what you planned, and you can really decimate someone's line and disrupt what they're trying to do, but you might find yourself being like, oh my God, I'm still shocking down this line. All my buddies are way back there. And it can be, it's fun. It's a good storytelling, but it's like, it can be to your detriment too.
The price I was about to pay in Newborn. So in Newborn's
yeah, you were getting pulled away. That's it. You were, again, you have this scrum and it has its own energy and own gravity, and you're starting to get pulled away from the nice little line that you have.
Well, and then you mix disordered in there. And that just screws up all your attack plans if you're disordered, especially if you wanted to close. Then again, we go back to everybody talking about hand-to-hand charges. It was not really that common a thing through the Civil War. It was closed to, maybe less than 100 yards and just start plugging away. But it's so much fun to do it. I'd actually try to play once in a blue moon. I'll set up something and I'll play. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to melee. I'm going to close. And we're just going to shoot it out and see what happens. Yeah, that doesn't last long because you see a freaking golden opportunity with a unit that's got 8 strength points in it, and the one sitting in front of you's got 2, and you're just like, no, I can't. I got to go in there. I mean, it's a blast to do it. I think it just adds that much more color to the game. And you're right though. And you think about it's so fun to see. Yeah, shit. Oh, they collapse. I chase them away. Oh, now I get to hit this guy. He's run away 3 hexes. Oh man, I'm rolling in it. Wait a minute. Where's the rest of my brigade?
Right.
Where the hell?
And everyone's disordered at the end. All the attackers will be.
Yeah, and then you're going to disorder anyhow. Right.
Right.
Now, in blind swords, you So, okay, it's the same thing. Your formations are, you've got whatever the attack, the defend, regroup, or whatever they have.
Maneuver and regroup.
Maneuver. And they all affect your capabilities. Now, so I know in Black Swan, even in a defend order, you can close on the enemy.
You can.
Blind Sword's the same?
You can do the same thing with Blind Swords. So the defend order itself gives a little bit of hidden capabilities in there, because you can shoot and you can close on the enemy. You just can't shock, close combat with the enemy in there. And with your brigade, if you've got units that are shaken, I know we haven't gotten into combat results and everything yet, but if you got units that are shaken, they can actually recover 1 level of morale as part of that. So it's a little bit of a hidden gem within there, depending upon the game that you have. Now, when I played the Whirlpool piece of it there, I used that a number of times with I was the US player, and I used that a number of times just to get repositioned, as well as to get some of those units that had been shaken back together, because that was just getting pummeled by McClaw's division. So, right. Those types of little hidden things within the games like that really make it, really make it quite useful and quite understanding. But it takes time to understand it within there. But you have kind of the same structure. You have your attack, which is equivalent to the assault, pretty much. You have and basically just gives the ability to close and close combat and other things on units. But the penalty for that is you can't recover, and you can't. Your movement is limited.
So you got to make a decision. Nothing sucks more than when you have a good attack going on, and now all of a sudden 2 of your prime units are not in the shape to continue, and you ask yourself, "My God, man, do I want to halt this?"
You got to go into a defend. If you've got trouble, you've got to go to defend immediately.
And then that's where I think the point of, all right, let's think of the second day setup where McClaws and Hoods set up 2 in the front, 2 brigades in front, 2 in the brigades in the second wave. So granted, it didn't work out the way they probably intended, but that's where you're setting up that reserve element to take over the push when the first element gets beat up too bad. And I will set games up and I will have that in mind the whole time I'm playing. And then something, pardon the expression, something turns to shit. And, one brigade is now devastated, but the brigade that I had in there behind, which when you're playing GBACW, it's a pain in the ass to move through shit anyhow.
Oh, and
stuff's running away scared to death back at you. That's even more painful, which we've learned many a times. But it's a hard thing to do. And, there's another thing where you can go right back to command and communication and your orders and stuff. It's all 3 of these systems throw that at Black Swan, amazingly enough, I find Black Swan of all the 3 to be the toughest, because if you're throwing a whole hour game turn away if you decide, oh shit, I can't do. But if you don't stop and get some stuff recovered, which there's also in the Rocket Chica Mall, I'm not sure which rule applies to that. There's certain things where you can rally a unit, but if they're in heavy woods or thick woods, or if they're in the open or something like that, I can't remember what, but you can't do it. Or and he's thrown in a new one in there too, where it's a card that if you're attacking a unit and there's an empty hex that's adjacent to both you and the unit you're attacking, you're going to get a flanking type bonus on that, which I thought, well, there's something that's different. And I'm trying to picture that rule, how good that would be in Stepping into Hell. As much confusing. So
even just the woods rule in Blind Swords and Black Swan, where if you're in the woods, you do not get support, and that whole concept of support, which we haven't talked about yet, the whole concept of support helping the cohesion automatically lowers your cohesion, because you're essentially by yourself when you're in the woods, no matter what.
Right.
So woods is good because you get the defense of trees in the way and stopping bullets and so forth and so on. But at the same time, if you guys are low morale or on the verge of breaking, that might just throw you right off. So,
Right.
there are little things like that that make that whole system shine, both in the Black Swan and Blind Sword side. But
Nord,
GBACW has its own as well.
Nord, I'm going to put you in a corner. I apologize to all you guys out there that are talking all this naval stuff, and I'm not posting your comments.
So you talking flying colors?
The Hexy doesn't do naval, so yeah. I used to order shock far too much. Okay, yeah. You're right, Richard. I hear you. I'm the same way. So, so I recall that using the defend order, it's easier to recover morale in Black Swan than in Black. Yeah, when you execute, because I think it's pretty much automatic unless you're adjacent, I think. And like I say, with Chickamauga, I want to say there was a special rule about woods, but it might apply to something else. So
yeah, with Blind Swords, you've got to be away from units. You've got to be 2 hexes.
Maybe that's what it is. Yeah,
2 hexes away. So you've got to, again, like Ross was saying before about positioning your units, you've got to think about, if you've got the shaken unit that's just been run over, you've got to probably flip to a defend, because you get some movement, to get them out of there, hopefully 1 or 2 hexes away, so that you can then recover them at the end of the turn.
Right.
But you got to think about that, and you got to say, defend is actually going to be better than trying to push it. So,
well, I just think about we saw the effect on New Bern about me chasing those Rebs off the corner, those earthworks. And then I shot a short in Black Swan with a chain reaction and I got news for Black in the Chickamauga game. And I don't know if it isn't almost recycled. If you chase artillery, if they have to retreat and they retreat into woods, they're going to get a shaking on them. And if you've already caused them to flip, you're rolling for a panic or a break test at the end of all that stuff right there. So, all right. I'm going to keep chugging. I know we could beat that one up to death too. The only thing I'm going to make a comment with on movement and maneuver is, and if you can pull it off, God bless you, because I don't see it happening, is keeping your formations together. All right. We discussed Wardrobe, McMurray and I discussed that with the Black Swan system, with them playing a most for sacrifice. Me playing you got to do the best you can to keep formations together for functionality, for effect, and in GBACW for command. You just got to do it. So, all right. We got 3 more things we're going to cover. These ought to go pretty quick. They're combat. Okay, so I think we've had enough with shock. Let's talk about fire, direct fire or defensive fire with grunts or dismounted cavalry and artillery. So pretty simple to Black Swan. Most cavalry units, other than the supercharged ones like what's his name down there in freaking Chickamauga, they're pretty much
Wilder.
Yeah, Wilder. So it's pretty much 2 hexes. Most cavalry is just 1 hex. Artillery, he didn't take the artillery in the system. He didn't go too deep with all the different types of guns. I mean, he pretty much narrowed it to 3 types of guns, I think, and pretty easy to work with. GBACW, range per weapons, because you're talking 100, 110 yards per hex. Different weapon types, which is great. There you go. There's the difference. There's the detail. Okay. And, whether, you have the optional rule to combine in GBACW, it's optional. Okay. I've tried it once. It's pretty cool. Artillery broken down by the types of guns. You might have a battery with 3 different sections for the Confederates. Not so much on the Union side, maybe early in the war. And then in Blind Swords, fairly similar with the Black Swan. The charts are a little different, but same premise to get a shot off and get effect on it. And their ranges are 2. I think it's not more than 2. I think with the dismounted infantry or whatnot. So I think the thing that if there was a new player out there or a player that struggles with something, and Ross, I think I want you to apply this with Into the Woods. And we're going to go back to line of sight, what we were talking about earlier, with the woods and the elevations. Give them a quick rundown. And I would say Into the Woods is a good one to use with the canopy rules.
Yeah, I mean, it changes things slightly.
That's the most complicated one, probably.
Yeah, that's a tough thing to explain. So I in general, you can fire over woods that are below you. They are the equivalent of like one level high. So if your opponent is on the level you are and everything in between you is lower, and this applies to the series rules in general, you can just fire over the woods. If you are firing lower, even if you are on the edge, so again, they don't use the kind of wedding cake concept there, but if you were on the edge where you could definitely see somebody, if there are trees below you, there's assumed to be a canopy of trees that you're firing through that also blocks. That's in the normal series rules. Into the Woods changes that slightly, where you can fire through one hex of woods or one canopy of woods, regardless, same idea. And you can still fire through it with a penalty. So that's, first of all, there's an article. If you play Into the Woods, there's an article that Dick Whitaker wrote called Seeing Into the Woods. It's on the GMT blog or whatever. It should just be in the box at this point if they reprint it. It's it's written well in the rules anyway, but having 5 pages of examples of here's what it's like to fire across a farm where there's one layer of woods on the other side of it. Here's what it's like to have artillery up on a hill with limited line of sight through the woods, and this is where they can see and what the penalties are. Incredibly useful article that Dick wrote, and I'm guessing Bill and them edited it. It's great. That can do a better job of explaining this than I can on the spot for sure.
Well, and I think where I was trying to go, because I knew that was probably the toughest one, is if you guys are playing this game and you're struggling with your determination, you know what? Don't sit there and get into a fight with your opponent, which could just be yourself sometimes. Just use your best judgment. If you think it's legitimate, I mean, come on, who are you hurting? Yeah, maybe you're going to cause damage to that unit, and maybe that fire shouldn't have been done. But don't browbeat yourself.
I for sure agree that, and especially a D10 based game, rolling 1d10 where you could have a whole range of results anyway, I'm inclined, I'll bog down and try to figure it out for my own purposes. But like, if you're playing the game, just be like, if I'm playing Alan or whatever, and we're trying to move it along, do you think I can see this? Yeah, you can see it. Okay, we'll apply that to you if you look back at me too, or whatever, and just move on.
Yeah.
It's not going to break GBACW to have some line of sight mistakes.
Right. Well,
the woods are complicated in the game.
They got into the gulch thing. They got into the field edge thing and stuff like that. And granted, I get it. I get what they're saying. There was a couple ways I thought they could have gone after it, but don't just, if you sit there and you do that, you're not going to play. You're just going to be, we all spend enough time in the rule books as it is. So just, either come to an agreement, call it, roll a damn dice.
Yeah, classic.
Figure it out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And get to play the game. You're not going to hurt nobody's feelings. Okay?
Trust me, the next thing that's going to happen, you're going to go through 10 minutes of figuring out that line of sight, and you're going to shoot that artillery, and you're going to roll a natural 5. And you're going to be kicking yourself because you spent 10 minutes on a shot that just killed you.
Yes.
So
yeah.
All right,
but
I
just
to
want to say that article, by the way, Jeff, that is where the series rules for GBACW by their design are they're rules. They're not decorated with a lot of like context and explanation, because they need to serve for rules across all these systems. Look for the additional content that the team has posted in various places, including on the GMT blog. You will then get or post on BGG and have one of them explain it to you. It starts to make way more sense when you have Dick Whitaker, who designed the box, have him tell you what the farm edge stuff and all of that is kind of representing and what it means to trace line of sight across it. He says it in writing. It just helps to have context and understanding of, oh, that's what he's trying to model. And then you can start to see it yourself. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, and right. I think like with most rules, especially that are difficult rules, as you start to execute it, that before long, most of the stuff will become second nature. Like I said, I find myself a lot of times with the rule book, a lot of times I'm going back in to look at an easy rule that I forgot instead of, because
Yeah.
the brain is so, I got to make sure I execute this right. But yeah, just don't browbeat yourself with the line of sight. If don't spend a half an hour looking for a rule because you're not playing. Now, blind swords, black swan. So, okay, now here's the difference. Okay, so GBACW, if you're in attack mode and you're on the move, you can fire pretty much at any point during your move.
Yeah.
You might get fired at by artillery if you're approaching. And of course, once you fire at something, the odds are they're going to return fire, which I will tell anybody out there, don't pass on return fire. If it's 99% of the time you need to return fire, because the opponent doesn't have to tell you what's next. The guy doesn't tell you what's next. So you better take your shot when you get a shot, because you don't know. Maybe he's got 2 regiments planned to close on that one. If you fired that first one when you got the chance, you might shake him away. So you might not ever get the opportunity. Blind swords and black swan is different, because in the sequence of play, it doesn't matter which order you've given, attack or defend, you fire first, and then you do your move, and then you do your rally, I guess, if it's a defend order. So does that work, or should that be changed? I say it works.
Well, and it's interesting because somebody, I think it was Arthur, somebody commented in there before, and I think you showed it up with it, because it was actually changed a little bit between the 2 games, particularly on the defensive fire versus the kind of the opportunity fire. I forget what they call it in Black Swan, but they changed that a little bit. So you do have a very strict way of going down it. You've got to go through your firing, you got to go through your movement, and then you go into your shock. And the movement, you can close on that unit that you're going to shock, but you're not going to be able to fire on it until they commit to a shock attack. So there is a little bit of a difference there, but I think it works in both the systems, because when you're dealing with the regimental level with the blind swords, you're getting up to it, and that shock is going to be, or close combat, I should say, is going to be, the key fight within there. But when you raise that up to the brigade level, and you're moving a full brigade, that's going to take a little bit of time. That's going to take a little bit of energy. You may have, the regiments of those brigades, fanned out a little bit more. So by shooting them and stopping them before they get close is an important factor, important factor to that. But it is a lot more rigid, but at the same time, you get the dynamics of playing chits within those phases to potentially counteract it. So, you can do things in there with the shock, like a command momentum, which I talked about before, that, after you do the whole thing, you can take a whole other turn. You get a whole other turn with the same regiment or the same brigade or another brigade right next door to it, that you can upset the whole turn right there. So the chits really control that, but you do kind of have that rigidity of the Great Battle System, where I think the Great Battle System kind of has a dynamic, as I said before, between the players, which I find highly fascinating when I play face to face, because you don't know what Hexy, I don't know what you're going to do when I move up against you. Are you going to if you're cavalry, are you going to retreat? Are you going to refuse your flank? You're going to, even with a shock, are you going to retreat before shock? Yeah. That type of thing. So that dynamic, makes it, really interesting within there, but that's not necessarily in there. It's kind of in the blind swords and black swan side. You're really, kind of in with that, but it works very well, because you still have that same type of narrative that develops coming out of it.
Well, and that little fog of war thing where, maybe you draw a chit or a card that says, hey, let this whole brigade can now fire, to me, that goes back to, hey, there's your lower level commander making a a decision on the fly.
Yeah.
We've been on a little more than an hour and a half, so I want to jump through these last two because I know we could sit here and talk for 3 days on this stuff here.
I thought that was the plan. I thought people had to
Yeah,
stay.
yeah,
we were doing a marathon. Is that what it was?
Yeah, I cleared my schedule at the beginning of next week for continuing.
I didn't think we're doing anything next weekend.
The scenario special rules, okay, and this is just sort of this is just a gloss. All right, we know that in all battles, because those have already happened, and there's all kinds of stuff we can read about to see the weird and strange things that happened in a battle. Orders being wrapped around cigars and found by the enemy. Leaders taking a nap under a tree and missing an opportunity. Just there's all a certain general marching out of sight with a handful of troops creating a dust storm that looked like he had an entire corps of troops, and all kinds of weird things. So special rules in games handle that. And I don't want to browbeat the special rules. I don't want to get in too deep on those. Let's just make this a simple question. And you out there in the chat world, you guys can answer this too. You can answer this question. What's your opinion? Are the special rules, are they too much? Are they too little? Or are they just right? I mean, I don't know. I'm in the mix. I think in some of the scenarios, a little overkill. Some of them are perfect. Ross, we were talking before we started. We're talking about Into the Woods, the killer for the first 4 or 5 whatever turn, and then it just stops and it goes away and the whole game flow changes. I did the first activation in the Shadow game, the Blind Swords one, and while I know, I don't, you'll be able to tell me once you start reading, Camp. Maybe you already have. I don't think Cleburne was initially very successful against Sherman on the first few minutes of the fight because that was very bad terrain he was trying to climb.
It took till about 10 a.m. It was about 4 hours, 4 or 5 hours before they crossed Shiloh Branch successfully and cleared all that area.
Well, now see, depending on how the dice roll, and there you go. There's another Fog of War. Is your dice roll? I think that's the biggest one in every game you play that has dice. I chased 3 regiments off of that little ridge across that creek. Just there's a mandatory rule that after the fire activation, after artillery fire, Cleburne is automatically activated and he must close on the enemy. And I'm thinking, oh God, he's going to get slaughtered. Well, there's also, for the first couple of turns, +1 cohesion to the Confederates, -1 to all Union troops. And the dice rolls were strong enough that I just chased Sherman's, front couple of brigades or some regiments out of one brigade, just chased them off there. And now Cleburne's up and over now granted, it's not done, but he's up on those heights already. So what is our general opinion about the special scenario rules? Are they too much? Are they too little? Or in most cases, are they just enough?
For me, games I played for GBACW, at least, it's generally right on for what I'm looking for adding color and for things like random events and whatnot, but then also adding enough structure that it's not programming it, but it's also not a sandbox. It's meant to simulate the problems that were faced initially in this battle when 2 forces met. There's certain things that you need to set in stone or set in the rules so that you as the player also have to engage with those problems. And otherwise you have a sandbox game, which is a different type of game where it's like, everyone's awake in the Union camp already and they can all line up immediately or whatever at Shiloh. That's a completely different game. That might be interesting, but not what I'm interested in. So for me, it feels right. The amount feels right. That being said, the smaller battles, and that includes some in by swords and bayonets, I don't think need as many special rules as are included. I don't think the juice is worth the squeeze on some of them as far as the amount of wrapping your head around what they're trying to model is doing for kind of a small conflict.
Yeah, and I will say that with the by swords and bayonet, the footprint of the games that are in there is great for getting into the system. maybe a little much, I think, on the special rules. But
I agree. That's why I think something like the Race to the Wall at First Kernstown in Death Valley, to me, still seems like the entry point. Pretty minimal special rules. There's some things about command again there, but really you don't have rain rules. You don't have all this like I don't know. Yeah, I think those.
Yeah.
I think the smaller the scenario or the battle in GBACW, the you want fewer special rules just because they're meant to be played quicker and they're not as
right.
they get in the way. It feels like to me.
Yeah, Lord, I don't like that rule at all, and I'll never play line of battle where Reynolds has to die. I'll never play any game where you force me to kill him. Camp, what's your consensus on that?
I totally with what Ross is saying about smaller battles, because I've played most. I will, by the time I finish the 1862 stuff, I'll play all of Death Valley within there, which I think is fantastic for the range of battles you get in there. I will say this, and I will tell people, if you are brand new or you're having somebody to learn the system, the best battle, in my opinion, is Rutherford's Farm. It's extremely simple. The special rules are almost non-existent. There's a couple of little special rules in there, but you get everything. You got infantry, you got artillery, you've got cavalry. It's a straight up fight. They're both lined up right there with each other. You strip off everything. You're just dealing with activations, and the two of them are just kind of going at it. But at the same time, you're highlighting the good stuff, the push and pull that we're talking about in the fighting. You also get cavalry, and you get to do a cavalry charge. And on both sides, this is both sides that have it in there. And there's very little special rules in there, and it's very simple for people to get into. And it's one of the best. I've used it 3 times to teach people, and they're like, "Oh wow, this is pretty cool." Of course, I've stripped down all the other rules when I'm teaching them, and just say, don't worry about core commands and all this stuff, but just concentrate on the activations. And people are loving it. So I totally agree. Is the details of the special rules are great. I'm in your camp, Ross. I love it. I mean, to see something the way it actually happened, or have something to do this, and if we're playing Second Manassas, they should have a throwing rocks rule and everything like that in there, because that's what they did to fight. But it can be very overwhelming. And that's one thing I think that Blind Swords, originally, I'm going back to the, Stonewall Sword and some of the very early ones, they did not have a lot of that. It was very simple, very straightforward. And for a couple of reasons. Early game, they're still trying to feel itself out. And, everything else that you didn't want to have a lot of stuff, making it harder for people. And then they've added that on. And I take a look now at, Blind Swords, the Shiloh version, which is interesting, by Steve Carey, and also the latest one here, sitting over here, the Gettysburg one, First Day. And I'm looking at this and I'm going, wow, this has changed a lot, because there's a lot more special rules for the Gettysburg First Day. It's well needed, because you need to simulate that. Most Gettysburg games, and we know, going back to Terrible Swift Sword, you could just steamroll with the Confederates in there and get through. So you've got to have those special rules to keep it within the reasonability of history, and to have that happen. And that adds complexity to it. But at the same time, it can be mitigated to only what you need.
I guess I would have thought that if you wanted to kick out a learning box, don't bury it with special rules to throw the premise of By Swords and Bayonet. I think it's like 99% perfect until you overwhelm it with. I'm curious, because it's been so long since I played. I'm still, the Death Valley box is still the greatest thing in the world, I think, as far as what's in a box for the price. And then you buy the $25 expansion to get 4 or 5 more battles encounters. Yep. But Ross, since you're into the woods, is there, because I can't remember, is there, I want to say it's two-part question. There's a special rule for Stewart's Brigade of Sherman's Division, and is there a special rule for the dumbassery-ness of Prentice to Peabody?
At the beginning there is, well, Yes. Peabody has his, starts with his detachments, and they're out there basically scouting around and getting in contact. If you want to save those SPs, you basically are forced to just run them back to Prentice's command and get them reabsorbed. Again, you don't have to do that, but it's kind of scripted to get you to go back, which is what happens. So you can actually use them. And yes, and Stewart's Brigade over on the Union left, I think I'd have to look at the rules again. I'm still absorbing all these early turn rules for Into the Woods. They need to start moving towards actually, they might not need to move towards Sherman, but there is some limitation on them. I forgot what it was. There is also a brigade, though, the 15th Michigan, I think, or something. They have to start running down immediately to reconnect with Prentice, and then there's a roll. They might get removed from the game. This is funny. I need to show people this if you haven't played Into the Woods. This is 3 of several charts of the, I know the camera's going to mess it up, but 3 of several charts, mostly of the early first few turns of special rules. There's some. Here's some more. Here's some more. A whole chart here for scenario 1 about everything for 6 a.m. that's in effect, everything for 7 a.m. that's in effect, everything for 8 a.m. It's a lot in this scenario of little tiny, even down to the brigade level special rules to recreate some of these dramatic moments during that battle. And it's cool.
Yeah, and I like the front load on, and I mean, and Shadow is probably one of those perfect examples. The Wilderness might be another one. Is that surprise element, and like the Shiloh one, and these guys are talking. They were talking about here saying it's too heavy with special rules. The Blind Sword Shiloh, and it is there's quite a few of them in it, but I didn't find it to be killing, and a lot of it makes sense. So, all right. Anyhow, let's get on to this last one. I want to get this thing closed out. We've been going at it for a while. All right. And this is also for you all out there in Watchy land. Ease of play and duration. And Ross hit me up about this earlier. This is more general because, you could nitpick, you could set up a small GBACW scenario in 2-3 hours. Maybe you played it, or you've played it to the point where you're done with it. Okay. You don't think there's going to be any more progression in it. But not so often. The game, it's a grind. Playing GBCW is a grind. You've got to be a person, and this is my opinion. You guys can voice yours here in a second. You and the crowd can too. If you want to play details of linear black powder warfare, in my opinion, the new GBACW is the ticket. Okay. Blind Swords, and I'm going to appreciate what Herman has done with that. He could have taken that game and said, just as deep as GBACW, but he didn't. He made it so that it can reflect, potential historical outcomes and the way things worked. And he just made that rule set a lot lighter and easier for the player to deal with. Okay. So, and then last but not least, which is always interests me, how can you take a full battle game and make it just as effective, but lighter than a scenario-based game? So I'm going to say, and this is just for me, in my priority of depth, well, shit. I mean, you know what? We're blessed. We got 3 great systems. All right. And I got a couple things written on my little whiteboard over here at the end here that I'm going to just mention that are good, I think are good games or good systems. But we've got 3 phenomenal systems. I haven't had a chance to play Shattered Union yet. I'm going to give it a go to see, how that takes it at that smaller level. But we've got these 3 systems that I think any player out there that wants to play ACW, if they don't have the ability to play this one system because of the crunch, hey, there's 2 more for you to choose at. Dude, I want to play Gettysburg, but I don't want to play a game that's set up for 8 months on my table. Hey, guess what? We got a Most Fearful Sacrifice. Or, hey, I want to play the Battle of Kernstown, but I really want to study this thing and set it up and you know what, blind swords just is not enough for me. Hey, we got one for you in GBACW. You're going to get all the crunch and detail you want. So, you know, of course, my order of priority has always been, I'm a GBACW guy, have been since the 70s. Terrible Swift Swords where I bit, you know, into just to get me started. I still have 3 copies of that damn thing. Once in a while, I'll break it out and mess around with it. Granted, it can't touch today's GBACW. It's not even close, in my opinion. I know there's people that were trying to figure out how to do it. Why? We have the new ones, and we're going to have so many more games in the newer systems. Some of the boxes you get with GBACW are so loaded with content and scenarios and stuff to play. But once again, you know, GBACW and blind swords. I got it. GBACW's got to be right there. It's the crunch. It's the detail. If you want to see that, if I want to blow through something a little faster, then I'm going to play that blind swords. And if I want to play a big monster battle, we've only got 2 right now with the Most Fearful Sacrifice and with Rocket Chickamauga. Wonderful games. And if I want to play something a little lighter, the whole battle, that's what I'm going to play. And where do you also? I mean, it's
Jeff, let me ask you this: if it was me, let's say, or maybe someone that hasn't played GBACW also, but like a war gamer that knows games, could you sit down on just a weekend get together game day and do blind swords with somebody and be able to teach them and get a game going and play through most of it?
Faster than I could GBACW.
Because I feel like it's a leading question, because I feel like GBACW, no. You need to study it before. If I'm playing with somebody, I need you to like read it for a week before. We're going to need to talk about it, show you some things, because it's going to be a long haul to try to teach someone how to play it. It's a
process. It's a process.
Wardrobe, if you're still out there, I mean, he can answer that question. His first delve into GBACW was, we set up 2 brigades while he was here. We didn't throw anything, we throw any special rules or anything out there. We just went through the core stuff. And I think we spent 2 hours. And you've seen how fast he's picked the game up.
Yeah.
But I gave him just a very light core rule. I mean, I think anybody in this group right here could take somebody in any one of those systems if we were all 3 playing them. And I think in a couple hours, we could have somebody basically, we could get to pushing counters around.
Okay, so in that sense, they're all roughly equivalent of heaviness as far as a teach for a first game or something. You're not going to be able to sit down and be like, here's blind swords, here's my 15-minute explanation, and then I'm playing competently. It's going to take more than that.
Yeah.
Okay.
For sure.
I mean, the rule book is I'm looking at it, and it's not a small rule book either. It's a complicated game as well. Blind swords.
Oh yeah. It has grown, and particularly if you take a look at the latest one with Gettysburg, you got exclusive. You've got core rules, exclusive rules, and then scenarios. There's a lot in there to this, and it's ramping up fast. But it's well needed to simulate that battle. You're not going to get a first day's battle of Gettysburg just by lining up counters. You're just going to overwhelm them, and going to have a problem. I think, with, and this is one of the things I just want to bring up regarding the rules. I think one of the things with it, you've got, and Ross, you said it perfectly before, you've got the rules, and it's all the rules right there. And it's kind of like reading, the interstate code laws.
Right.
It's all right there in that one book. And one of the things, like I said, I've taught others with it. Again, Rutherford's Farm, I'll keep going back to that. And then just taking out bits and pieces and tell them, go read about the activation phase, go read about fire, go read about movement, things like that. Forget about marching, because we're not going to march. We're all right there. And, just pulling that out. And I'm kind of a program rules guy, kind of the squad leader, the original squad leader, where you did, a section.
Nut jobs in squad leader.
It's going to be a squad leader channel soon. So.
I see it.
But it's you do that, little bit by little bit, and you slowly get immersed, and you cook the frog, so to speak, with the whole thing. So that can get people going with it and get them excited about it, because quite honestly, everybody wants to get in and just kind of slug it out and see what it's like and develop that narrative. And once you get into the activations within Great Battles, people love it. Once they go, oh, okay, I can refuse flank and I can do this and I can do that. And oh man, that shock attack just did this.
Yeah. You gotta want that. You gotta want that detail. You gotta look, and I'll tell anybody out there. I mean, I'd love to sit here and say, look, you know what? If you don't want to get deep into ACW and the linear warfare, don't touch GBACW. I don't ever want to say that, because it's the greatest thing, I think. But on all honesty, if you've never touched anything like this, I'm not going to recommend you start with GBACW. Now that I've said that, we know what's coming in the 3-dog box. All right. And am I going to play it? Not a chance. Am I going to read it? I am. All right. And while I'm throwing that out there, all right, for those of you in the crowd, that is they're creating like they did with Julius Caesar, the Great Battles History. They're making a simplified rule set if it brings people into the system. Believe me, if those rules are what I think they're going to be, knowing that crew, it might just be a couple step ups to get yourself going down the full road of GBACW. So that might be what's going to bring people. We're hoping for McMurray it does that thing. Now, Ross, you and I think we're talking a couple weeks back. Here's our dilemma as gamers. Maybe you're not sure, and somebody, was it Art put it on there a second ago, about right there. The differences between Black Sword and Black Swan. Here's our dilemma as gamers. If you don't buy 3-dog deluxe right now on pre-order for $63, you can bet you're going to be paying $125, $130 for it later. That's our dilemma. And that's all I can say to it. I would rather have it for $63 and maybe never get it to the table, because I'm not even going to make that statement about resale. But that it's just, I mean, and I'm going to say it right now, run right now. Stop everything you're doing and get over there and pre-order the game for $63. While you're there, pre-order Stepping into Hell at its reduced price too. It's just, I thought we've had this discussion over the last couple of weeks, and I'm sorry, it's just the right choice. If you even have one of the games, and of course, I'm also going to tell you that if you're going to start GBACW, it's not, you can't get it anymore new from the developer or the producer or whoever makes the game. But if you come across a box for Death Valley, hell, I've given away 3 on this channel already in the last year and a half. You better buy that box. Even if you don't want it, buy it. I'll buy it from you. But if you want to get into GBACW and you can find that box, marvelous. And I will say this again, in defense of 3-dog, if you want to get into GBACW and you want to start basic, go pre-order that thing right now, the deluxe, for $63, and you'll get those basic rules. Granted, they're probably going to put them up where you download the rules anyhow once that happens. But you'll have a game, and you'll have the basic rules and a game to play them with when you get them. So, that's it. But like I say, if you're going to play a big game in GBACW, if you're going to play Gettysburg, if you're going to play Shiloh, guys, don't think you're going to sit the game up on Friday night and be done with it by Sunday.
No. I've played 4 sessions of Shiloh, the big scenario, which is 12 hours of 12 turns, and possibly going into a second day. And this is with 2 players that have been playing for almost a year straight, pretty much daily. And we're 5 hours in. It's taking more than an hour per turn, and we're not looking we're looking up the special rules, but we're not into the series rule book much. It's a long one. There's a French guy, I would have to dig up his channel. He's got a series of playing the big Shiloh campaign in Into the Woods.
Yeah.
It's like 45 videos long, and I can't understand anything he's saying, but it's been fun to click around on it. But he's like 45 videos in over the past year or whatever, hour-long sessions of one game of Into the Woods, which is great. That's what I'm looking for, so I'm excited about it. But
David,
there are smaller ones, but it's a beast. The big ones are heavy, and you're going to be staring at that map for a long time.
Yeah, and I can't remember the last time I completed a full complete game of anything of Gettysburg. because I mean, like I said, I'm impatient, I'm antsy, and after a while, I see another shiny toy over there that I want to take for a spin. Go ahead, Alan. I see.
Well, yeah, and that highlights something that they're doing, and Into the Woods was one of the first things they did this in, is they are putting in single map, smaller scenarios of key battles within the battle. They started with Into the Woods, which I actually play tested some of those, which I thought were great because
yeah, the
again,
Cleburne battle's the first one they
exactly they're good enough to set up. Yeah, it's probably maybe a full day if you're two good players, like Ross is saying. A couple people have played, you can probably get it done in a day. But if you're looking to set it up for a weekend or a couple of weeks just to learn it, just to get yourself immersed into it, hey, like you said, and they're doing this with Gettysburg as well. Some pretty significant ones. Culp's Hill is going to be a single battle. I think they're doing one for the first day there as well. And I think there's another one for Pickett's Charge, if I remember correctly.
right.
They're all going to be single battles, which, yeah, okay, that's not the big thing, but you can get yourself learning it. You can get yourself into it. And then maybe, as you said, Hex, that, we get this thing together. We get multiple people in there. That's where it's a lot of fun. If you've never played this with multiple people, then you're missing out, because you get 4 people, just 4 people, 2 on a side. It's super fun. You get like 6.
Yeah. Well, when I went up to
Gettysburg
Gettysburg 3 years ago, and they were all there, and I mean, Stigler flew in, tour guide Phil was there, a whole bunch of people that have either had their hands in it. Pretty much the entire design crew at the time, I think at that time it was Dick Whitaker, Bill Byrne, Dick Vollers, and Al Smith were like the 4 at the time because of the games that were being worked on. Dick and his one of his buddies, they played the 3 Dog Deluxe scenario with Buford on the first day. I'm telling you, they were up there the whole week. I only came up there twice. I think they played it at least 10 times, that scenario, because they were trying to make sure they had the vedette rules right and how the fight went. And the guys that were playing Stepping into Hell, they had Thomas Beach was down there, I remember. They were, I want to say they had at least 3 on each side, and they were splitting the map. And they had the activation chits for like the lower half of the map separated from the activation chits for the upper half, and they were executing both sides at the same time, which worked because they actually got a majority of that game played in that week. And I remember I went up on the first day they were there. Of course, you all know I never go to Gettysburg on a weekend. So I went up there on Monday, and everything was kicking off. Tom Fernbacker, they had the revised, I think it was, I don't know if it was Chickamauga or it was Dead of Winter. I want to say it was Chickamauga. They had that upstairs, and they were playing him and Richard Smith were playing that one upstairs. And they had the GBACW guys there, which that got a lot of attention too. I met a lot of people on here from there. And I came up on Monday, watched them get started, helped a little bit with the rules at the time. And then I came back on, it was Wednesday or Thursday, and my God, they had made so much progression. And they were going out on the battlefield in the mornings, every morning, so with Bill. So am I capable of doing that? Except I'm too antsy, man. And Alan, I told you when we met for dinner, I said, man, I go to these things and I want to go home because all my toys are at home. I want to go play with my toys, So it's just the way it goes. But look, I'm just going to say it again. You've got 3 great systems here, okay? There's something for everybody. If you want to get into ACW, you can ask any one of us, ask in Facebook, hey, make me a recommendation to get started. And anybody, you might get some different answers. Everybody has their own little opinion of where to start at. Some probably have better knowledge than others, but you'll get an answer. And I'm no doubt in my mind, you won't get pointed in the wrong direction. You'll get the right direction. Now I want to throw out real quick before we close this thing out. And by the way, thank all y'all out there. This has been wonderful tonight. The questions and everything. Big plus. Great campaigns in the American Civil War. You want maneuverability, operational type combat in the Civil War, play it. I think it's the best cavalry rules of any game out there. Another one that I'm demoing the second version right now. I've played the first 2 in it. I'm getting ready to play one that actually has maneuver in it. The Rebel Fury game. And I emailed, I didn't have any rules questions from Mark Herman, but I had some in general questions. And boy, he gave me just a phenomenal answer on asking. My question to him was, what was your intent in creating this system? Because I needed to know. I needed to understand where he was going, because I didn't have any problems with the rules. It's lightweight, but his answer to me, an explanation. Now, when I go to play this next scenario, which is going to have maneuver in it, now I'm a little more enthralled about what this is going to be like, and I can't wait to see what this is going to be. Inexpensive game. Y'all want to play something very light on the rules for Civil War. Rebel Fury is a good one. I think you can still get. I think they're reprinting it. So, and then
also available digitally on Steam. You can play.
Yeah.
A lot of his. Yeah. And here's one that I mention all the time. Everybody's too. You take this with a grain of salt out there in La La Land. You're too chicken shit to play it because you're afraid of it, and that's Army of the Heartland. If you're scared of Army of the Heartland, go look away from ATO against the odds. I think it's against the odds. It's the same game system, just lighter play. But you want something that's operational and it's got detail to it. And don't let people scare you about the rules, because the rule book is written in the order that you use the rules. How people miss that, I'll never understand. But you want a game that'll bend your brain, but plays perfectly well with great big old charts to put units on the side of the table. And you can get them cheap. I just saw somebody selling a shrink wrap copy for $30 the other day. If I didn't have two myself, I'd have probably bought the damn thing. But Army of the Heartland, John Prados did it. Great game. Tim Zales, how you doing, buddy? Again, thank all y'all for being out there, guys. Great brain trust, man. I appreciate it. We're starting to, there's always been the GBACW group, and now we're starting to develop our own. And I think there's going to be a lot more stuff with this, I know, going forward, because I know, Ross, you're digging in deep to some stuff. Come on, anybody goes out and buys 27 books on Shiloh just to learn one GBACW. And Camp, you're all over the goddamn place with GBACW.
Yeah.
So either one of these guys' channels, Ross is just building his up now, and his buddy. Alan's got a bunch of stuff. Camp Sawyer, get over there and subscribe to him. I think you're playing 3 right now, aren't you? At least 2.
Yeah, I've got a couple. I've got a couple face to face on Vassal going, and then I got the one that I'm videoing there, McDowell.
Right.
And Alan's consistent. You get content every day or two. I've done one thing in a month, so
you've got that focus that we need, Ross, and it's been just a blessing, I know, to me and Todd when we play stuff.
Yeah, he's got good detail. The video, you take it in chunks, but I work from home, so put it on the background, and all of a sudden I'm watching that and not working, but that's fine.
Nice. And Hexy, I want to mention, because Alan just mentioned this, and this could be cool for a future video. It's hard to get, the more number of people you want to do this, the harder it is to get everyone together. GBACW, as Alan just mentioned, I can't speak to the others, possibly the same, but GBACW, fantastic multiplayer game. If you want to talk about interesting command stuff, give a division to 6 different guys, 3 on each side, and each one gets a division, and limit the amount of communications you can have. You're not doing a council of war every turn or something, and see what happens with command structure. And you get someone who's eager to do their thing, and you get that real sense of, oh, that's how it happens on the battlefield, is a glory hound goes and does their own thing. In the future, if we could get 6 of us or so, I don't know if that's possible for everyone to get together, but even playing an hour at a time, that many could be really interesting.
Yeah.
Or doing it async and then doing a summary of what had happened or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. One last note before we close this out, the stream. I'm going to say, I said it near the beginning. I have the intention of picking a date next year, maybe at the end of September, beginning of October. I'm going to pick only one day where I'm going to go up to Gettysburg and try to get a whole bunch of other people. This is not going to be a gaming thing. I'm going to track down tour guide Phil, which he was on here earlier tonight. He said he'd be more than happy. He's a blast to have. He's very knowledgeable on the battlefield and many others. But I know a lot of you guys think traveling from all over here for one day, but you could actually travel out and spend 2 or 3 days out there yourself if you wanted to and do your thing. But I thought it would be really cool to get one day where maybe just I don't care if it's 3 of us or if it's 50 of us. Just meet, we convoy and mosey around the battlefield, let Phil give us some details and just cut up with each other and have a good time. I spent 2 hours with Camp a couple of weeks ago, and it was a blast.
Right.
Yeah, we'll go right there.
Little round top right there. There you
So if
go.
you like that idea, keep it open. When I figure out specific day, I'll post it as a short. And if you guys want to get together, what we'll do is we'll set up where to meet up, which will obviously be the tour center or the visitor center. And then we'll go from there. And like I say, some of you guys that would travel across the country, you can go out there, spend 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days, whatever you want to do your thing. And then we'll all just spend one day together and get to know each other and just bring this to full fruition. Great show, guys. Thanks everybody in the crowd. Everybody have a great Sunday. Go Commanders. All our quarterbacks hurt and hockey starting. And we'll see you all later. Peace.
Bye, everyone.